This video right here is actually a continuation from the last video I uploaded, and I probably should write a script, but I'm not going to do that, and I'm going to do this off the top of the dome. So we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it goes well. So in this video, we got to go all the way back to the early 2000s because I want to expand on when I say why, depending on what Gundam series you like, G Gundam or Wing Gundam, basically told you what kind of fan of Gundam you are. Were you here for the moment, or were you an actual Gundam fan? Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. Or were you a Gundam fan? Even though G Gundam was made first, and if I remember right, G Gundam was the first Gundam series that was not set in the Universal Century. The first Gundam series that was introduced to the West was Gundam Wing, and that's how a lot of people were introduced to Gundam, including myself. And with G Gundam being the first go-around at a Gundam series outside the Universal Century, you could definitely see how, at least when I look at it, you could definitely see how G Gundam inspires Gundam Wing. Even look at the story. You have 5 different pilots that fly 5 different Gundams, and they all come together at the end to face one big enemy. So basically, the story beats are technically the same between the two series, but I would say the big difference is the reasons for it. Where G Gundam is more of a straight-based story and it has like a tournament arc and different Gundam fighters, Wing Gundam is more of an war-like story, overcoming with all this intrigue and depth. So now, where does the split happen between G Gundam and Wing Gundam in the early 2000s? So let me start off with G Gundam. G Gundam was a series that fell in line with any shonen anime. The whole entire point of G Gundam was the Earth basically wound up being ruined. Like, it just became a desolate wasteland. So every nation wound up creating colonies and went off to outer space. And so what they would do is I think it's every 4 years. Every 4 years, each nation will send down a Gundam. They all have their own Gundam. They will all build Gundams and send them down for this world tournament. And whoever wins, they wind up ruling the other 4 nations for the next 4 years. So it's basically a cooler version of the presidential race. And of course, there's underlining stories like the main character having to go find his brother and take him out because he stole a very powerful Gundam and it caused a lot of issues with his family. Again, if you want, that's not what this video is. It's not a summary of G Gundam, but if you want to know what that is, you go check it out for yourself. Again, great series, definitely like it. But the main point I'm trying to say is it's just more straightforward. The other thing about G Gundam and what you have to understand is at that time, pretty much the biggest anime that actually caused the anime explosion in the West was Dragon Ball Z. And the way the Gundams were, the fact it was just a tournament fighter, and if you actually watch the show, G Gundam was a lot closer to Dragon Ball Z than what the Gundam series has always been. But at that time, nobody knew that. So when you talk to people at the time, basically what people would just say is, it's basically just Gundam Ball Z. Because if you look at the fighting, look at the attacks that it does, that's really what it was. It was a lot more closer to Dragon Ball Z than it was to Gundam. Whereas with Gundam Wing, the premise of that story was that 5 Gundam pilots in their Gundams got sent down to Earth to take out the organization Oz for oppressing the colonies. I think that's right. I might got that a little bit off, but I think that's just it. So these 5 pilots go off and do their own missions without knowing about each other at the beginning of the show to basically take down this militant organization, Oz. So Gundam Wing has the benefit of being the first Gundam show that was introduced to the West en masse. I'm sure there's some people who got the old Gundam series on like tapes and stuff. But for the mass audience, the very first show that most people saw with Gundam, I know I first saw, was Gundam Wing. So Gundam Wing had the benefit of being the first Gundam series that you saw. Not only that, it was a way better representation of what you're going to need to get when you watch Gundam or go back and watch older Gundam series moving forward. So this is really where the split happened. And this is how, depending on what you were a fan of, basically the sentiment of the time. If you were more of a G Gundam fan, you felt that basically Gundam Wing was kind of more of a boring show. Whereas if you were more of a Gundam Wing fan at the time, you kind of felt like G Gundam was a ripoff of Dragon Ball Z. That's just kind of how you felt, at least where I was at. So that's why as you move forward with the Gundam franchise, if you started with G Gundam, or you like G Gundam more, you wanted more of a more shonen Dragon Ball Z type anime. That's kind of what you're looking for. But with Wing Gundam, since it's a lot more closer to what Gundam is, it was a lot easier to continue forward and you kind of knew what to expect. So people will move on to the next Gundam series and they'll be like, it's boring. Whereas if you're a really big Wing fan, this was kind of nothing really new. So that's kind of how I was back then. And of course, it has changed now with recent times. I'm starting to see that there's a way bigger Gundam fan base that's growing, which is great to see. But yeah, that's just kind of the sentiment of the time, early 2000 when Gundam first came out, at least here to the West. And what really, you know, these were the two really big main Gundam series and kind of the sentiments of it. And that's why I always say, if you're trying to get into Gundam, if you're trying to introduce somebody to Gundam, do not start with G Gundam. That is probably one of the worst Gundam franchises to start off with. Not saying it's a bad series, but I would say if you're more of a Super Robot fan and you're into that Super Robot kind of stuff, a great series to watch. But if you're trying to get into Gundam or more like real robot series, do not start with that one, especially if you're trying to get people into Gundam. That one will really give people the bad idea of what Gundam is. But anyways, that's all I wanted to say on this topic. Just wanted to put my thoughts out there. It was just a fun topic that was just running through my head. So I hope you enjoyed this video. And I do want to make sure to let y'all know, nothing in this video defines if you're a Gundam fan or not a Gundam fan or a better fan or not. This is just basically like a little small history of the time. That's all this really is. So whether you like Wing Gundam or whether you like G Gundam, none of these two things define the kind of fan you are. If you enjoy, you enjoy it. If you don't, you don't. That's all it is. This is just more of a history lesson and the sentiments of the time. And also to expand on the reason why I would never recommend G Gundam as the first series that people should watch if they're trying to get into Gundam. Now, I'm not saying G Gundam is a bad series. It's actually really good. I actually do enjoy G Gundam. But if I'm going to recommend a Gundam series to get people into Gundam, that would be one of the last ones I would recommend. Next week or two, I will be doing a new Gundam live build. So if you want to check that out, make sure to stay tuned. That will be happening in probably the next 2 weeks. And like I said, I want to say this again, if you didn't watch my live stream, the next 2 months are going to be my choice. So there's not going to be no place to vote. So the voting will be coming back in June for the next Gundam live build. And this month, I'm going to be building the Load Astray if you want to check that out. So I'll be back with another one of these talking videos next week. And I think next week is not going to be a Gundam video. It's going to be something else.